Welcome to Mindset Revolution with Raquel. I'm excited to bring you episode 3, where I speak with Erika on her Clubhouse podcast, where boundaries equals self love. Take a listen.
Hi, Raquel.
Hi there. I'm so happy to see you once again. Oh, hear you and see your beautiful face on the Clubhouse picture. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
All is well. Been very busy, but really, really good stuff happening.
Cool. Um, I found a really stupid, ridiculous reality show. I'm gonna send you the link. I watched the whole episode. It was so funny. Anyhow, let's get started. Our topic today: creating healthy boundaries as act of self-love. This is extremely great topic to talk about, especially those of you who are looking into having the one or ultimate love. Healthy boundaries are necessary stuff to have.
Absolutely. And this is never more true. I'm speaking from a parent's perspective, especially exhibiting that in front of your children, because it really does break generational belief systems. Some people call it karma. Other people might call it generational curses, but it's all the same thing. It's just things that happen over and over again that you see in front of you, that it's so played out in maybe your family or in your culture that it's normal. And then you get to a point where, wait a minute, this is not normal. And then you have to make a decision with that awareness. It's like the whole thing with the matrix, which pill you're going to take, and having to decide, recognizing this is not normal. And so do I continue with it, knowing it's not normal, knowing it's not healthy, just to kind of stay in the tribe, stay in this group, or do I do something different? And it really, really does take a lot of courage for you to not only recognize it, but decide enough.
Yeah, especially like those of you who weren't growing up in the household which is like encouraging having healthy boundaries. Like some of you might have grew up in the strict household, and then you can't really express your opinions and stuff like that. Or you might have the narcissistic parents, so they have no idea how to respect other people's boundaries, that's including the children. And then if you grew up in that kind of household, it is very difficult to understand what boundaries are, because you might be scared about how much you can, what you gonna say, how much you can express what you want or what you don't want, because you're too scared of hurting other people's feeling or offending or something like that.
Yes. And sometimes it's not even about offense. It's like what I said earlier, like not wanting to get kicked out. That need for connection is in all of us. And it's actually healthy. We're created to be interdependent, but not codependent. And so we are created for community. We are created to build these beautiful family-like structures. And so when you recognize, oh my gosh, I can be a threat to the shaking up of this family structure or family-like structure, um, it's a very difficult situation to be put in. I mean, even recently, and the reason I brought up this topic was because recently I had a family member, and very close, very intricate into my upbringing, and there was some communication going back and forth, and then it ended up going to one of my children, and I was just like, enough, and I cut this person off. And the child that was having also this communication with this family member decided, one of my children decided to cut the person off as well because of the blatant disrespect. And I was like, I understand this person, this particular family member, and I know the wounds behind this person's decisions. It doesn't make it okay, but it does give me compassion to be able to say, I forgive this person, but also create the healthy boundary of I'm putting you on a timeout. So you can't access me through phone or social media for a while because, again, this is not the first time we've been through this, and I love this person, but there had to be a very clear cut enough. And so I was having this conversation with my three kids. I have a 13, an 18, and a 20, almost 22-year old. Well, actually, the 18 is now 19 years old. And so they're, still young people, young adults. And they were just like, wow. But when I first did the cutoff, it gave the strength to my son, my 19-year-old, to cut the person off in love, saying, I'm not having this. This is very disrespectful. And we're not going to talk about this anymore. I'm dropping it. And I was explaining to them that it doesn't matter who the person is, and going through the situation and kind of like giving them a little bit of backstory so they can understand and still have compassion for the person and forgive them, but also saying forgiveness does not mean restoration. And this is the thing when people are like, well, I'll forgive, but I won't forget. Well, when you do that, you're holding on to the grudge and you're holding on to all that toxic memory inside your body, and it'll only make yourself sick and you create your own prison. So I was explaining that to my children. We're having this conversation about forgiveness and boundaries. And I said, it doesn't matter. We're talking about this particular situation that came up and kind of just blew up over a few days. I said, it doesn't matter if anybody does this to you, including me, that if I ever do this and disrespect your boundaries, and it's different when somebody doesn't know any better, because people have different backgrounds. I'm also dating somebody from a different religion. Well, it's similar religion, but still different the way we express it, and a different race. And so, we have differences, but so there have been some miscommunications, and then we talk about it. Um, but with this family member, I said, you give people because you love them a chance. And so any relationship worth having is worth working on. And so you can work through those things if both parties are willing. I said, but this person, this isn't the first time they've done this. And they already know that I will cut them off. But they did not know that my son would also cut them off. So that was new. And he did it in a loving but firm way, which I was very, very proud of. But I was explaining to them that even if I do those things and I overstep and I still continue to be disrespectful to you or going against your boundaries, not agreeing to disagree, just wanting my way, whatever it was, then they have every right to not speak to me. Like, I would expect them to put their foot down and say something. And they were just looking at me like, well, you would never do this. And so we would never cut you off. And I said, I don't know, maybe I have some head trauma. You never know. Get into an accident, forget who I am, and then be a completely different personality. But I was encouraging them that they have to have the courage to walk away, and the person who has the courage to walk away holds the cards. They have the power, which means you need to take your power back by saying enough is enough. There is a way to speak the truth in love, and if the other person who is crossing your boundaries is not, they don't have to understand it or even like them, but they can say, okay, I don't understand this. I don't really care for it. But I love you and I want to be in a relationship with you. Then they will figure it out. You guys can figure that out together. It can't just be one way. And if it's going to be one way, then having the courage to say enough. And if it means that everybody disagrees with me and I'm ostracized for this, see, I'm okay with that. And it took me a long time to get to that point of I'm okay with that. And it came through the school of hard knocks because I learned the hard way that when I went against my own conscience, and that's something that not all churches really teach very well. They want to talk about sin, but sin is also is called missing the mark as well. It's actually the definition for it. You miss the mark when you go against your own conscience, when you decide to compromise, when you know that it's wrong. And then because of that, that opens up the door to guilt and to shame, which is really a false sense of guilt and a false sense of shame. But that's allowed to come in and seep into you, and resentment and bitterness, because you weren't given the freedom or the latitude, or hearing something like this that says, you know what, I'm in your corner and you have every right to not be disrespected. You have every right to decide this is the way I want to be treated. And you have every right to say, enough. You were rude, you were disrespectful, and you can continue to be that, but you will not be that in my presence. And if you want to be in my presence, the door is open, but these are the rules of engagement. I don't care who you are.
Yeah, it's really important to set certain standard. Like I was talking about a particular person the other day with my girlfriend, and then I'm not going to use my girlfriend as an example, but let's say a person is manipulative, right? And then it's a good idea to set the boundaries, even little bit of manipulation. You know, doesn't matter how important that person to you. If you know you're being manipulated, for example, doesn't matter whom, that could be your parent, that could be your love interest, whoever, right? It's really important to set the boundaries, like saying this is not cool. Because when some people are doing something offensive to you, the person may not understand that what they are doing is wrong. So if you keep on putting up with it, you are kind of enabling the behavior of this person. And then once you set your boundaries, like, okay, this is as much as I'll take, and then I'm not gonna be so close to you when you are acting like that. Then, like you said, you know, the person has to figure it out if he or she wants to continue to be in your world, right? Maybe has to change their behavior with you, even though they don't really change behavior toward other people. But I guess when you are showing your example how you can set the boundaries, I think it's a really ultimate gift to your children. Like, they can learn from you that, okay, I can set boundaries. This is not something you shouldn't you should be doing, no matter what kind of relationship. And that's going to be helpful for kids to have a good relationship, healthy relationship, and avoid something toxic.
Right, because we can find ourselves in a toxic situation without realizing it until it's kind of too late. And then you have connections with people, you have love for them, or they're your family members, and you're like, oh my gosh, and now what? Um, because of who we are, of course, we want to be very respectful to other people, but that has to start with the respect of self as well. And yes, we are to carry each other's burdens and be there for another, but we can't do that to the detriment when you're thinking about like someone's emotional health and mental health, because there has to be boundaries for those things, and that starts with you of really being able to love yourself. We're told in the good book to love our neighbors as ourselves, and so when we are not creating these healthy boundaries with other people, it is because we don't have healthy boundaries for ourselves. It reminds me of when people say that, actions speak louder than words. Words are always an indicator. Words create things. And a lot of times people really lean into that because they don't even have integrity for their own words. For instance, when you're thinking about your New Year's resolutions, right? I'm going to do all these things by the end of December, and most people end up giving up on what they said they're going to do within the first couple weeks. This is why gyms make so much money in the first month, right? In the first 2 months. Because after a while, people are not committed to themselves. And so they don't see, it's like a micro macro, what they're doing to themselves, what they're saying to themselves, how they're not committed to themselves, how they don't create healthy boundaries for themselves, ends up being mimicked in some form, not all the time, but 80/20 rule, most of the time with other people. Because we can't love people properly unless we love ourselves properly. We can't have healthy boundaries with other people if we're not exhibiting that for ourselves. And we're not making that connection because we're not seeing it. We're groomed, like I was groomed, right? When we get married, you stay married no matter what, unless, and even then, even if he's not, what was, there was somebody in my family, he's like, oh, well, he doesn't hit her much. And I was like, much? What? Why did you add that word? He doesn't really smack her around much, but he's a good provider. He's a good husband. He's a good father. I'm like, how? Because he works and he provides financially? That doesn't make him a good husband. It doesn't make him a good father. If he's, he doesn't smack the kids around, but he smacks the wife around. I mean, what is that? And growing up around a lot of that physical abuse, and some of the people in my family were sexually abused, and all these horrendous things that happened. And also this false belief system of you staying married no matter what. I mean, he really has to be beating you down pretty bad, or committing adultery with multiple people. It's not like just one time. Oh, well, he just did it once or twice. No. Like, where is this coming from? Having all these things, and even in media, telling you these things over and over and over again, and then when it comes to your own life, you're automatically, not even realizing it, making those kind of decisions. One of my coaches, her name is Rita, and she says, there's a difference between your belief and your do, because maybe you keep your word when you say you're going to do something, but you also believe that other people won't. And so it opens the door for people to come in and really disrespect you, and to disrespect your time, and disrespect your money and your energy and your love and your attention, because in some form you believe it to be true.
Yeah, and also, Peter Sage was talking about how marriage was created, and marriage was created for taxing reason. So Catholic Church wanted to tax from those people, and then they decided to, people being married is good for the system for them. So there's always agenda to it, right? So being married, because I'm the sort of the one who believed in, oh, once you get married you have to stick together no matter what's happening. And that was 4 years of my marriage. I tried so hard to compromise and try to get along, but the point is, when it's not the right path to be on, the creator will show you the way that that is not the right path, and then you're gonna kind of like started to sing a bunch of signs, and then your higher self, your spirit team, and everybody will steer you to the right direction, even though you are so committed to this because you're taught to stay on this route. And it was so funny, like I think a month ago I did see the dream about my first marriage, that um, I haven't really grown as a person. I'm still married to my first husband, and then we have two kids. And I was still like yelling at him, and I didn't really change much, didn't grow much as a person. Let's say who I am today grow 80% since then. For that life, only 10%. you know and some people very stubborn, or some people genuinely think like, okay, you have to be together because of the religion, because of the family. You don't want to be so controversial because that's not your culture. But it's really important to look at how you feel. Are you happy? Can you continue to be with this person you no longer feel anything about for the sake of keeping your appearance or try to prove you are religious? You know, it's not really. And it was like crazy to me. Like after my dream is really realistic. It's all color. It's almost like, and I don't really see myself. I see other people like as if I'm in that dream. So it's really hard to understand like until I wake up if I'm dreaming or I'm actually experiencing the reality. So I woke up and I'm thinking, wow, I haven't changed. And then I was like, I'm so glad I chose the way um, I was guided to, because some people they don't really notice when you get the guidance. Like 3 days ago, I got super clear guidance again, according to something to do with my career, and then I was like, oh, just forgive, keep on going on, keep on going where I'm at right now, and that was burn wrong decision, and then my guide was reminding me of what's happened, reminding me of what's happened a month ago, and I was like, okay, I got it. I follow the message you guys gave me. I'm gonna be moving on, and I'm like, yeah, when you are like paying attention to signs and the messages, you don't have to be super spiritual person. Just pay attention to what's happening in your life, right? Like if you're supposed to be going to the right direction, everything goes very smoothly. It just does. That's how it is. When you're having right job or you're having like what you gonna call it, right relationship or something, like things will go through so smoothly as if like blessing is everywhere. Of course, after you get together and get married to your ultimate soulmate or something, yeah, you will have challenge, but you don't have like huge obstacle in front of you to preventing you to like be together or something, for example.
We're in this world, not of it, but so we're going to have two relations. We will have obstacles, but it doesn't mean that we're not overcomers. They're just bumps in the road. It's just life. Life happens. And I was listening to something funny right before we started. We talk about relationships. It's like picking the right person is so important. The guy, he's a comedian, one of those clean comedians, and he was talking about Job, and in the book of Job, like everything's taken from him. His kids die, his servants die, his animals die. Everything's ruined. He's covered in boils and all this other stuff. But you know what he's left with? His wife. And all we know about his wife is like she said, "Why don't you just curse God and die?" I mean, she was a picker. It's so important to pick the right person because I mean there's a lot of people who are very compatible, and I do believe in an ultimate soulmate, and it's easier. Life is easier with them because even if you're different and even if you have challenges because of personality gift clusters, there is this understanding and this undercurrent of love and acceptance, and I'm not going anywhere, which is really important to have in my first marriage, because of these erroneous belief systems that I had about marriage going in and not leaving, and no matter what. I think that, had I had the courage to leave, I don't know if it would have changed anything. So always that butterfly effect. People always want to know if you can go back and change anything, would you? And most of me is like, no, because it led me to somebody who loves me and adores me, and it's like my fantasy list from when I was younger. And having that person, I don't know if I would have changed anything along the way if I would have not ended up then with him, because I'm like, well, now I have my fantasy life, I have my dream life with this amazing man. um and if I would have changed anything, even saying not getting married or maybe walking out. Part of me always thinks about maybe if I would have walked out at certain times, it would have saved the marriage. And I'm thinking, well, no, it really wouldn't have. It wouldn't have. Um, but when we know better, we do better, right? And this is why we talk about these things. That for those who are in those kinds of position, you know, I remember a pastor telling me, if you knew now what then what you know now, would you still marry the person? And I remember thinking, no, no. And he's like, and that's part of how you know. And it gave me such a relief in a way, because he was the only pastor who would say, I'm not for divorce. I don't believe in divorce in most circumstances, because people sometimes, people just end up being very selfish and thinking about themselves, um and that's why they grow apart, is because they're not thinking about each other anymore. And that's a different issue. But when things are happening in the marriage and there's disrespect and there's emotional abuse, only because someone isn't getting slapped around doesn't mean that they're not getting slapped around emotionally and verbally. And those wounds are just as bad. And for people who say, no, it's not, everybody has experiences that people told them things when they were younger, and they're still wounded over those words. So to say that words don't matter and that that's not really a reason to adjust the boundaries or your connection to people is ridiculous, because we've all been through situations where people that we love, that we care about, that should be watching out for us, have said something, and it's still playing out decades later. So coming to the realization that things, if it's not okay, it's not okay. Having the courage to say so, and also, you know, doing your best to do it in love, but in truthfulness. And sometimes people need some firmness because of their own personality. Somebody who has a dominant personality, they want to be spoken to in bullet points, and you need to give them a clear path and vision in order for them to buy into that. Because a lot of times those kinds of personalities are attracted to somebody who's a lot softer. So somebody who is a lot softer doesn't like to be yelled at. Like, don't raise your voice, you know. But somebody who's in a dominant personality might be, their voices just are stronger in nature. They also can be more have a higher volume than somebody else. And so those are just getting to know each other and the nuances. And it's like what you were saying earlier, Erica, it's like, you know they may not know it's disrespectful to you, but this is part of wanting to be in somebody else's life and studying them, and watching and seeing how they respond. And when you're seeing them that they're responding positively, you do more of that particular nuance or languaging. I call it, I heard one of my favorite communication teachers, he calls it sidestepping your communication. There's nothing wrong with you sidestepping your communication, because everything you want is in the gift of someone else. And if you don't learn how to sidestep your communication just because you want to quote unquote keep it real, you're going to end up having issues with people all your life. For the rest of this podcast that runs about another 30 minutes, you can check it out at Erika's Clubhouse. Her handle is at Erika Maria 1111, all one word, and Erika spelled with a K. I'll go ahead and put that in the description to make it much easier for you to connect with her and this particular podcast. And as always, you can check out what's going on with the free events and other opportunities for us to connect at yourdreamlife.coach. I'll see you next time.